Okay, today is day 463 of going live. Today we're looking at a property to add to our comparable sales list. Now, if you understand what we've been doing, right, we're looking at properties that are 3 bedrooms on Redfin for less than 3 days. And the reason we're doing this is because if you've been following what we've been doing for the last 12 months or so, we've been tracking all these properties that are coming on the market and have been sold. And then we tracked most recently the properties that have been sold, particularly the 4 bedroom plus properties that have been sold in the last 3 months. And most recently, we're now tracking properties that are coming onto the market because we want to understand what is happening in the market right now, right? What is happening in the market and what is a dollar per square foot that these properties are coming on a market for. The reason we're doing this is because, well, the affordability goes up and down all the time. And that's because of the 10-year treasury yield. Not just because of that, because everything's market specific, but interest rates affect the affordability of home prices tremendously. And the 30-year mortgage interest rate is driven by a few things, but most important is that the interest rate of the 10-year treasury yield. Okay. Obviously depends on the interest rate of 10-year yield. And then it also depends on the spread between the 10-year yield and the 30-year mortgage interest rate. Now, historically, that spread has been between 1.5 to 2 points. It's gone as high as 3 points, but between 1.5 to 2 points, that's the historical average. That's why you can see that right now our interest rates are probably close to the 12-month high for the 10-year treasury yield. But the spread has narrowed. So that's why you don't see interest rates in the 8% anymore. You're seeing them closer to the sevens. So as interest rates go back up, then naturally you might start to see that the home prices that are being sold for or closing at are going down. Now, the reason this is so important is if you're pursuing the BRRRR strategy, right? Buy, rehab, rent, refinance, and repeat. That's a BRRRR strategy. That strategy is heavily dependent on you getting your ARV or your after repair value correct. And why is that, right? Let's use an example. Let's say you buy a property for $20,000 and then you spend $50,000 renovating the property. Now you're all in at 70 grand. Now, if your property is worth 100 grand after the 50 grand renovation, so you're all in $70,000, but you got a property that's worth 100 grand, you now have $30,000 of equity built into the property that you forced through your renovations. And then you also can now go get a debt service coverage ratio loan, which is a DSCR loan. And that'll probably allow you to get back up 70% of the home's value. And now you can get back out the original 70 grand that you have and use that to rinse and repeat over and over again, right? So you get back out the 70 grand in the form of loan proceeds. It's not taxable. And now you get back out all the capital you invested. Now you can do it all over again. That's what makes the BRRRR strategy so scalable. Okay. So that's why we're going to go and try to attempt to get our ARVs correct. Because when the time comes, right? I mean, how do you look for a comp? A comp, ideally, if you want to look for a perfect comp, I would say, hey, does this home right next to it, does it have the same bed bath count, square footage, type of finish, year built, lot size, all those different factors that kind of are very, very important and used commonly across many different type of appraisal methodologies. All this stuff matters. But typically that never happens. Typically, if you cross man-made borders such as this I-20, a highway, we cross natural borders such as creeks or rivers or parks or mountains, now you're in completely different neighborhoods. So as you get your property refinanced after you finish renovating and you don't get the appraised value that you're looking for, what do? Well, you have to provide substantial proof to justify why you think your home is worth a certain value, right? Because for a refinance purpose, this is not for a sale. So that's why you need all these factors in, and that's why we track all these numbers, right? So for this property, let me just write down these details. There's 412 Avalon Park in Hueytown. Hueytown is a quieter area outside of Birmingham, but lots of families like it. So let me go ahead and plug in these details here. This is a 3-bed, 1-bath, 1184 square feet. This is being listed for $129,900. This property is being listed for built in 1956. 1956. This was listed 3 days ago. 1,225. 9147 to the lot size. 9147 square feet. No. There's no garage, no basement, and no carport based on what I remember. Yep. And condition of this home, I would argue that this home it's rent ready. There's no recessed lighting. Not a super modern. And are there any photos of the bathroom? Yeah, no photos of the bathroom. So I'm going to assume that the bathroom needs to get renovated. So let me write down what neighborhood this property is in just by scrolling on the map and scrolling out. And this is an Avalon Park. So I want to just write that in. Avalon Park. And right then and there, I can see that I just looked at a property 2 months ago. That was a 4-bedroom home, and that was also in this Avalon Park. And this property sold. Oh, they probably got taken off the market. Oh, they might have decided to rent it. That's crazy. 247 was listed on 1026 for $77 a square foot, and there's been no indication that it was sold. So, all right, good to know. Now, this property is average kitchen, average, no pictures of bathroom, average kitchen, rent ready but tired, no pictures of bathroom, no flooring work needed, but panels are ugly on walls and could it use a fresh coat of paint. All right, so this gives me a general condition of the home. Now I know that, hey, if I ever am looking for a property and I'm looking for the as-is value, if this property sells for 129 or 130 grand, that's in somewhat of a renovated fashion, then I can have some confidence that, hey, this might be either be a good floor as a 3-bedroom or a good floor if I were to turn into a 4-bedroom, because I know that if this 3-bedroom sells for this price and I am able to buy another 3-bedroom and convert to a 4-bedroom, then this might become my floor. So there's a lot of uses for this property once I know whether or not it's sold. All right, that's why I keep track of all these numbers for these properties in this market my own way. All right. Now, the next thing I want to do is I'm going to analyze this deal alongside with you. Now, this property is $129,900. Okay, $129,900. For my renovations, let me take out this plus $10,000 in B6 because that was just a scenario for yesterday. I'm going to go to my rehab calculator. I'll add $1,500 for the roof just in case there's any patching that needs to get done. I got $500 for some landscaping. For my property, I'll put in 1,100 square foot, which is this right size, right? It was 1,184. So I'll do 1,184 for the paint job. I don't need any flooring work. So that's row 86 for the paint job. Now, my kitchen, I'll probably just put in some stainless steel appliances. I'll just put in some low-end appliances of $2,500. For my cabinets, I think I could honestly repaint them to make it look a little bit nicer. That's my personal preference. And then for my bathroom, I'm assuming to renovate the entire bathroom because I didn't see any photos of it, so it's probably gonna look ugly. And this is just me looking to get the home to the condition that I want it, right? That's not necessarily saying that you need to do all this work just to be rent ready, okay? It's not the case. It's just my standards, and this is how I'm approaching it. All right, the next thing I need to do is get my market rent estimator. So if I go to affordablehousing.com and I go to the owner section, I go to the market rent estimator, I plug in the address, plug in the bedroom count, I can see that the average rent for 25 units that are 3-bedroom in this area within a half-mile radius is $1,272. That's a lot higher. And I can see why this is a little bit higher than what we saw yesterday. Yesterday, I think we saw the property at roughly around less than 1100. Today, this area, because it's more desirable, is a little bit more quiet. You see that rent's a little bit higher here. Great. So now that I got these properties in here, the next thing I want to do is get my property taxes for my expenses in here. Obviously, double check with your county assessor records before you close. But this is 102, so I'll put that in there. And my insurance is 101, so I'll multiply that by 1.2. And that's going to give me a total insurance estimate of 120. And I multiply by 1.2 because I'm adding a 20% premium. Typically, insurance companies view investment assets as riskier assets. So that's why they want you to add. That's why I would prefer adding a 20% premium, because I'm assuming that this $101 estimate is for a property that is being used as a primary residence property. Okay. All right. So now I get 10% set aside for my maintenance, 10% set aside for my property management, and I got 5% set aside for my vacancy. So on this property, if I do a 25% down in F19, my down payment is going to be about 32 grand, which is based off of my asking price in B4, multiplied by my down payment percentage of 25%. Got 2.9% for my closing costs. I got 24.5K for my renovations. For my financing amount, that's going to equals to my B4, my asking price, minus my down payment amount in E19. So I'll be financing 97K. And if I put in 7.5% interest rate right now for this property, I will be cash flowing 1% roughly. 1% cash on cash return. That's a $50 cash flow per month, assuming I can rent this property out for $1,272. Okay, great. That's assuming I buy this property for $129,900 with a $24,500 rehab. Great. Now, what I want you to go through is the exercise of learning how to adjust upwards and downwards your numbers. Now, when you're able to do this, here's what I recommend. I would probably suggest playing with the asking price first to see what its effect on your cash and cash return is. So this tells you really quickly what is needed for you to make this deal work. If I put 100 grand, that's only 5%. If I put in 80 grand, now I'm at 8%. If I put in 75 grand, now I'm at 9%. If I put in 70 grand, great. Now I'm at 10%. Now, I'm not saying 10% is a magical number. But if you have your own target return, then you need to understand why your target return is what it is. So it's because this is not an investment advice. We're not soliciting any investments on this call. You have to understand what is it worth to you for the execution risk that you're going to take on. What is execution risk? It's when, hey, what are the chances of someone, that contractor, saying whether he or she said they're going to do what they're going to do? What are the chances of your Section 8 inspection actually happening on time without any issues? All these factors matter. What if the tenant trashes your home? You have to decide, what do you want to risk in exchange for the return you're looking for? And some people might not even care about cash flow. Some people say, hey, I don't care if I break even, if I'm buying $1 million property and it's just getting 5% appreciation every single year, because that's $50,000. Right? That's a completely different strategy, but that might be a bigger wealth builder. But that's not necessarily always the case. And only you understand what your goals are and what your strategy is. So that's why we recommend doing this. All right. So for going forward, what I would recommend is let's play around the numbers. So let's write down these scenarios, right? So now at $1,272, again, everything else stays constant, I can cash flow $364 a month. That's a 10% return if I can buy this property for 70 grand, assuming a $24,500 rehab with 25% down and 7.5% interest rate. Now, if my interest rate drop a whole 1.5 to 6%, look what happened to my cash and cash return number. Jumped up by nearly 1.4. So now my willingness to pay might go up to 78 grand, because that still gets me to my target return of 10%. And that's what happens when your interest rates drop a whole 1.5. That's what happens when your spread got narrowed from 3% back to a historical average of 1.5 to 2%. Right? All these factors matter. So you got to figure out, what do you want to do and how you want to handle it, and how do you want to go about it? All right. So let's say you want to be creative and you say, hey, maybe I can turn this into a 4-bedroom. What do 4-bedrooms rent around here in Huitown? 1468. So I'll do 1400. So now what if I can add an extra bedroom for 10 grand, right? Since I'm doing this renovation anyways, and just maybe just put a wall if there's space. I'm not saying there is space in the home, but that's one way you can look at deals a little bit differently. So you add 10 grand and now all of a sudden it's 79 grand that you want to pay for the property, but that's because your rehab went up by almost 10 grand to put in permits, etc., to get there. So now you're at $35,000 for a rehab. You can buy the home for 79 grand, which is $1,000 more, even though you're putting in an extra 25 grand. Now, obviously, this is not considering what the value is of the home after you BRRRR it, if this is a BRRRR. But this is just simply assuming you bought this property on the market and you can rent out a $1,400 4-bedroom home, because now you can cash for $472 a month, and that's still a 10.1% return. You can buy for $1,000, but you have to spend about 10 grand more in this scenario. And that's what you can do, right? You can adjust up and downwards this renovation number as you learn more, get more accurate bids. And that's how you get good at this, right? My hope is that you copy my homework, right? Do exactly what I did today. Analyze the same deal using the same spreadsheet. I didn't make this spreadsheet from scratch. I got it from a few other folks. I modified it, tweaked it so that I can analyze deals as fast as possible. But the whole point of success for you to get practice, for you to figure out, how do I adjust up and down the lever to figure out whether or not this is a deal for me? All right. If you guys want to copy the spreadsheet, go to affordablehousing.io, not .com.io. Go to the Get Deal Analysis tool. Put in your name, email, your phone. That's the fastest way for you to get a copy of the spreadsheet. And I hope you put it on your own YouTube channel. Right? Put it on your own YouTube channel, because at some point, someone's going to ask you, hey, why do you think this is a deal? And you can tell them that you know this is a deal because you've been looking at properties for the past 462 days. Might that give you guys some confidence that you know what you're doing? I certainly hope so. All right. Have an amazing day, everybody. If you guys haven't checked out my latest podcast, you go to the video section on youtube.com/@Kent_HE. Just had Chris on. He talked about his journey going from a caseworker all the way to becoming the director of housing development now at his nonprofit. Really great story. And if you are in the New Jersey area or just in the Northeast area and you want to hear about all the different funding sources and you can understand how to pull all the levers to make your deal work, I thought that was a really, really valuable podcast, and just shows you just how much work it is, but possible work, right? It's definitely possible. If you put in the work, you try to understand all the factors, this is definitely within your reach. All right. I hope you all have an amazing Sunday. Spend some quality time with your family and friends today. Thank you so much for supporting the podcast. Without all of you, I would have never had the home I grew up in. So I appreciate you all so, so much. Have an amazing Sunday. I'll see y'all tomorrow for day 464. Have a good one, everybody.